Welcome to the We Rise podcast, where we are building collective resilience. I'm your host, Christine Gyovai, business owner, wife, mother of two, paddleboarder, and I love working with communities across the nation. Join me as I share stories and strategies to inspire action to build resilience and community transformation. From the Navajo Nation to the mountains of Appalachia, incredible work is being done by community members and leaders. I'm excited to share more on the podcast today. Welcome. Hello, and welcome to the Collective Resilience We Rise podcast. In this episode, we're going to dive into what resilience means and talk about points of inspiration. We'll also hear a preview about the incredible conversations you'll hear on the podcast. The We Rise podcast cultivates a sense of belonging and learning to grow resilience and spark inspiration through sharing stories of people transforming their communities and regions. In a time of increasing polarization and conflict, community leaders need to hear how others have forged a path to resilience in what felt like impossible times and through insurmountable obstacles. To create change, people need to feel like they belong and they're part of a growing movement. They need to know that their voice matters and that they have the inspiration, agency, and ability to transform their lives. They are the key to a resilient future. Change is often sparked by inspiration, seeing what others have done, especially in peer communities. People see that when someone looks like them or lives in a place like theirs, and they've created real, true, and lasting change that will allow their granddaughters and grandsons to thrive, they begin to imagine what might be possible in their own communities. No longer waiting for someone else to come and save them, they realize that they are the ones they've been waiting for. But what creates that spark? What creates that inspiration? Learning through stories and examples, feeling a sense of agency and belonging, and getting fired up to kick ass creates that spark. We Rise will help community leaders and members learn to forge a new path towards creating resilience and true transformation. One person at a time, one community at a time, one region at a time. The quilt to transformation can grow piece by piece until resilience becomes the norm instead of the exception. So, what does resilience mean, actually? At a core level, it means the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or tough times, which we all have. But it also includes creating a stronger, brighter future for generations to come. It takes many shapes and it comes in different sizes. Resilience includes building community, a healthier environment, and robust local economies. It also means growing equity, inclusion, and belonging, prioritizing the care of self and others, and creating regeneration at all levels. There are many kinds of resilience. Individual resilience, which looks at a person's ability to recover quickly or withstand difficult conditions, or social resilience, which recognizes that the collective is more effective. We are a social species and we work, think, live, and thrive as groups of people, as well as individuals. Or ecological resilience, for example. How does a place bounce back after a significant storm or a fire? Or an economic resilience, which explores how a community or a region moves through an economic downturn or a shock and how it rebounds or even bounces forward to a stronger future. And what is learned in that struggle, in that growth, that is the key to resilience. You'll hear many stories about how communities and people have grown and transformed and how they've used that struggle as the key, the catalyst for their growth. So a little bit about my own story. I grew up in the beautiful mid-Atlantic, eastern deciduous, Blue Ridge and Appalachian Mountains. I grew up in Virginia and in West Virginia. I'm the granddaughter of a firefly scientist, a coal miner, a teacher, and a postmaster. I grew up among the rocks and trees and plants and so many types of moss in West Virginia, and I have my own secret fort. Like most of us, sometimes we're amazing and sometimes we're hard. When my father passed away of a sudden heart attack when I was 15, I found myself growing up a bit faster than I was ready to. I explored and learned in a lot of different ways. Fast forward to when I was 25, after traveling and working and learning in different places around the globe, I went to graduate school at the University of Virginia to study urban and environmental planning. My husband, Reed, also from West Virginia, and I made a film together about mountaintop removal coal mining while we were both students in the planning department for our sustainable communities class. We made the film after seeing the effects of mining on communities in southern West Virginia in the area close to where our families were from. The late and great Judy Bonds was my great Aunt Ruth's student when she was in 6th grade. And hearing the stories of people in place changed me. It changed us and informed a lot of the way that I engaged in professional practice over time. In that process, in that filming, we learned that acknowledging the pain, the loss, and the transition that communities were going through was vitally important as looking towards the future. We also heard how important working on positive solutions were. That's what the vision is. That's the inspiration point. We learned at that time that acknowledging the pain, the loss, and the transition communities were going through was vitally important. We also learned that working on positive solutions was equally as important. I started to learn about the incredible work taking place in the coal fields of Virginia, across central Appalachia, and in coal mining communities in other areas of the United States, as well as Germany, Wales, and other places. Eventually, I started my own business, Dialogue and Design, in 2005, which focuses on helping communities create the future they want to see. In my work, I met Deborah Horan, who will be featured in an upcoming episode, in my work of almost a decade with the Clinch River Valley Initiative, working to build local economies in Southwest Virginia all around outdoor recreation. CURVY, the way folks pronounce the acronym for the Clinch River Valley Initiative, focuses specifically on the Clinch River, one of the most biodiverse rivers in the world. The Clinch River Valley Initiative was created after a Building Local Economies in Southwest Virginia meeting in 2010, which I co-facilitated until 2018 with my colleague and mentor and dear friend, Frank Dukes of the Institute for Engagement and Negotiation at the University of Virginia. We held the meeting after listening deeply to dozens and dozens of people talk about the visions, dreams, and hopes and challenges for their communities. People told us they wanted a place to talk about the future of their communities that wasn't for or against something, not pro-coal or anti-coal. They just wanted to dream together. With the input of many local leaders, we hosted the meeting to envision what the economic future of Southwest Virginia would look like. Many people came to the meeting that knew each other, but didn't often work together. Environmental activists and economic development directors, academics and grandmothers. The meeting focused on downtown revitalization, artisan networks, and outdoor recreation, all economic drivers. We heard many great ideas that day, but the discussions that drew the most excitement were around outdoor recreation, and specifically the Clinch River. The Clinch has long been a favorite spot for locals, researchers, anglers, and recreationists. Named a global hotspot for biodiversity by the Nature Conservancy, the Clinch flows for 300 miles from its headwaters in Tazewell County, southwest through forested mountains and small towns to the Tennessee River. Then it continues to the Ohio River and the mighty Mississippi. Free-flowing and undammed in Virginia, the Clinch hosts some of the most diverse and imperiled aquatic wildlife in the nation, including more than 50 species of mussels, more than any other river in the world. Many in Southwest Virginia have fished in the Clinch for generations, learned to swim and been baptized in its waters, and have a deep love for it and the place they call home. After that first meeting at UVA-Wise, several people got excited about the possibility to connect outdoor recreation and local economic development through focusing on the Clinch, noting that it was a local asset that couldn't be outsourced or moved to another location. Or as a resource, it couldn't be diminished, as coal has been in Southwest Virginia and many other places today. Building collective resilience looks different in different places. What stories and strategies inspire you? Share your ideas with us on social media and check out our website at yeswerise.org to find the show notes, interview videos, and the links mentioned on the podcast today. As the Clinch River Valley Initiative grew, community members created a vision, several goals with active action teams, and a steering committee with decisions made by consensus about the effort. An annual Clinch River Youth Summit and educational programs are created. Several access points were installed for kayak and canoe launches. Regional marketing and branding campaigns took shape, and new businesses started to develop over the years. And there are so many new businesses today that are thriving, even through COVID. Town leaders and community members began to talk to each other and learn about each other's efforts across town and county lines. Many were happy to share grant sources, ways to support entrepreneurs to start and sustain local businesses, and were eager to share their histories as part of the Clinch River Valley Initiative in the broader region. People referred to the river towns, many of which were new to regional collaboration, as the pearls along the Clinch. A long-held dream by many was finally realized in connecting these pearls and creating a Clinch River State Park in 2018 in St. Paul. And several additional parcels comprising the park are still in the works to create a blueway along the Clinch, supporting both recreation and local economic development. Early in the days of the Clinch River Valley Initiative, one of the towns we reached out to was Dungannon, a town of about 350 people. There was a mayor in place at the time who said they didn't want to become engaged with the Curvy because nothing was ever going to change in Dungannon, and it wasn't worth trying. They said Dungannon would be a retirement community, and that was that. However, some community members did not agree. A few people encouraged Deborah Horn to run for the position of mayor, but initially she said she didn't think anyone would vote for her. She wasn't from Dungannon, and she wasn't even registered to vote at that time. However, community members from Dungannon and other small towns in the region along the Clinch encouraged her. She registered to vote, she ran for office, and indeed she won. Mayor Horn said in a conversation with me that the real inspiration point for her to engage was the young children in town. A retirement community wouldn't do much for them, and she saw them as the leadership for the future of Dungannon. They asked her why other towns in Southwest Virginia had playgrounds and lots of different things to do, but why didn't they? They asked her if they had less value than other kids. With tears in her eyes recounting the story to me, Mayor Horn said she knew she had to do something for them, and indeed she has. Mayor Horn has worked with several other people in Dungannon to create a playground and a farmer's market today. They've acquired hundreds of thousands of dollars in grant funding to revitalize the downtown. Young artists have painted murals on buildings. The train depot has been renovated and is an active place for community meetings and square dances, and a stage has been built where musicians play and Zumba classes are held outside. Mayor Horn helped coordinate the Hometowns of the Clinch effort, part of the Clinch River Valley Initiative, connecting towns along the Clinch. Mayor Horn and many other leaders in Southwest Virginia have learned from each other, shared ideas and resources, and especially encouraged each other actively to grow regional resilience, truly acting as a region. It's an amazing story and one of many that we'll share on the podcast. At the same time, we'll dive into what we as individuals and as a collective or group can do with the struggle that we all grow through. We can each find strength from our struggle and use it to learn and grow. For example, my grandpa Joe was born on May 18th, 1918 in Blair, West Virginia. He was a coal miner until he was paralyzed when slate fell on his back in the 3-foot coal seam he was mining. Even though he was in a wheelchair all the time I knew him, I remember him as strong and independent. He didn't act like he was handicapped in the slightest. He had hand controls in his car and he drove everywhere. He had a boat and he went fishing and he gardened and grew enormous zucchinis. And he was fun. There were always a line of grandkids waiting for a turn to ride around in his lap while he did wheelies in his wheelchair. I never heard him complain, but I know through family stories that times were tough, and mining took a steep toll on my grandpa's mental and physical health. In a recent interview with Marie Forleo, author and researcher Dr. James Gordon said in May of 2021, when trauma comes, it comes to most of us. And if it doesn't come early or in midlife, it comes when we grow old and we're frail. And inevitably, we lose the people we love. We have to deal with our own death. So trauma is a part of life, and we need to understand that and not be ashamed if we've experienced a situation that is overwhelming and disturbing. Trauma is a Greek word that means injury, and it's going to come to everyone sooner or later. That's what's really important to understand. And if it comes, or when it comes, that's what we can learn from, heal from it, and move through it. But if we don't look at it that way, we look at and say someone is traumatized, they're disabled for life. That is in fact not true. There are ways that we can learn to bring ourselves back into the balance that trauma disrupts. The physiological and the psychological, the social, the spiritual balance that's disrupted, we can come back into balance. We can mobilize our intelligence and our imagination to find new ways, both of understanding what's happened and new ways to move forward with our lives. And many ancients and indigenous people understood that. Modern psychology is just beginning to catch up, and we're calling it post-traumatic growth. We can actually become better, more integrated, kinder, and more helpful, happier people after we've moved through the trauma that comes to us. So thank you to Dr. James Gordon for those words. As we share stories of resilience on the We Rise podcast, we invite you to share what your stories are through social media, because together we rise. So again, welcome. Thank you for joining the We Rise podcast. To learn more about the stories and speakers featured in this episode, check out our website at yeswerise.org. You'll find the show notes, interview videos, the links mentioned today, and you can join our email list. Subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave us a review or a rating. You can also find us on Facebook or Instagram at Collective Resilience We Rise to share your ideas. The Collective Resilience We Rise podcast is produced by Dialogue and Design Associates, podcasting for creatives with music by Drishti Beats. Thanks so much for listening. Welcome to the We Rise podcast.